today. And that's how it should be on Father's Day, right? Father gets to sit back, take stock, look at the things in life that are really important, and having your family, even when they're not right next door or cooking up something, you can go out for a family dinner or brunch or picnic. We got the next best thing. You got front row seats from your own living room. We are bringing you a transatlantic Father's Day presentation with one of the great friends and advocates on behalf of Israel, Bob Abrams. He's dear to our heart here at America-Israel Friendship League as a longtime board member and the head of our delegations committee. He is a personal tour de force in the legal courts. We're going to talk about that a little bit. He's a tour de force in communal affairs, and he is someone who has literally brought and held hands to bring people to Israel to understand her story better and to employ his secret weapons, his daughters, his grandchildren, people who on their own right deserve to have their own webinars. Today they're here in a fiduciary capacity. They are merely sending greetings, very proud greetings to their dad, Bob Abrams. So before we begin the family affair and a personal view of a very public figure, we wanted to extend some greetings that will be a colleague and close friend of Bob's, wishing him, introducing him to you, as well as sharing a little bit of a greeting for this episode. So let me turn over to a person whose face will warm all of us to start this off, Senator Joe Lieberman, and he will share some greetings, hopefully to put an additional smile on Bob's face.
Well, I'm really delighted to have the opportunity to say Happy Father's Day to everybody, particularly one of the best fathers and grandfathers I know, and that's Bob Abrams. To congratulate Bob on receiving this honor from the American-Israel Friendship League, and to congratulate the American-Israel Friendship League on its 50th anniversary. That's a lot of happy times, simchas, all in one. I met Bob Abrams in the early 80s when I ran for Attorney General of Connecticut. And it was just so exciting to me that this Attorney General of New York, who was really known as the best of the AGs, was willing to come up and campaign for me as I ran for this office for the first time. And he never claimed credit for the fact that I won that election, but I give him some credit for it. But what's more important is that after that, Bob became really a mentor for me as Attorney General, because he set the standard of excellence. And probably most important, Bob and Diane and Hadass and I have just become the best and closest of friends. Bob has had a great career of public service and continued it after he left the Attorney General's office in many ways, but this American-Israel Friendship League is very dear to him. And he's had a real impact through the work he's done with visiting attorneys general from around America on strengthening the U.S.-Israel relationship, and therefore on strengthening the security of the state of Israel. Now, there's yet another reason to celebrate today, because Bob has published a wonderful memoir, an autobiography called The Luckiest Guy in the World. It's just a classic Bob Abrams title for him to choose. The truth is, Bob, we are all luckier than you are because you are our friend, or you have been our Attorney General, or you have taught others like me to be better public servants by your life of service with honor and excellence and ethics, and always in the interest of the public that you serve. So congratulations to you on the book, on the honor, and on Father's and Grandfather's Day. And thank you for being such a dear friend to Hadass and me. We love you.
Likewise. Likewise.
Well, in addition to having those greetings from nearby Connecticut from Senator Lieberman, we have people calling in from Netanya. We have people calling in from Fort Lauderdale and Jacksonville, Augusta, Georgia, all around New York, and obviously around the world. It is Father's Day, and before I do the next familial introduction to Bob and the memoir, I wanted to encourage everyone, wherever you are around the world, to put into the chat someone you're honoring as a father or a grandfather, someone you're remembering today that you want, to feel the love. And the spirit of this episode really is about recognizing what a person can do in their life as a role model. When I read through Bob's book, I think that's what struck me the most, is thinking about the kind of legacy you leave to your children, you leave for others to follow, your colleagues, and then what they can do with that, because it multiplies so much of what any one person can do in their life. But when it becomes multi-generational, the kind of impact that you can have is really incredibly magnified by that. So we thank all the fathers and grandfathers and their memories that are with us today from around the world, and we'll continue to celebrate it throughout this episode. And now we'll turn to Becky and Rachel in Jerusalem, who have the benefit of being physically together, and fairly recently were physically together with your dad as well after a long wait. So tell us a little bit each, just to introduce us to the private side of this very public figure, your dad, and his legacy as it relates to each of you. And if you want to make them blush a little bit, that's okay too, because Magiello, it's he has enjoyed this journey. And when I asked who would he most like to actually introduce him, he said I would love to have my daughters with me on this episode. So tell us about your dad, the luckiest guy in the world.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for having us and facilitating our Father's Day party. This is really a treat. We really appreciate it. Send our thanks and our kudos to our friends at the America-Israel Friendship League. My dad has brought many America-Israel Friendship League delegations to our home here in Yerushalayim, and Becky just made Aliyah in the last 2 years. So it is just such a thrill to all be here together. In terms of growing up with my parents, you could see behind my dad all the pictures that represent the span of his political career, and you could see our faces peeking out here and there. It was a very special thing that there wasn't really a wall between the public and the private, the family, and that's something that I embrace. I mean, on the one hand, when you're a child, you sort of take it for granted. You don't really know any other existence, but looking back on it, it really was super inspiring. There are the small little memories of just playing in a treehouse in Gracie Mansion, the mayor's residence in New York City. You don't realize not every kid in New York City gets to go play in the backyard of the mayor's residence. And then I know there's a story that our friend Blue Greenberg always tells. When we were at her house for Shabbat dinner, someone was leaving whose name was Mayor something. And I went to go tell my dad, the governor is leaving, because I thought he was a mayor, he was a governor, he was a congressman, he was something in that world. I didn't realize it was just his first name, where you saw the picture of us marching in parades. And on the one hand, these were things that we took for granted. But on the other hand, even as a small child, I sensed that both of my parents and the people who filled our house, who worked in public service along with them, dedicated their lives to these high ideals. and they really set the bar high. They showed us that people need to connect themselves to the most important events of their lifetime. I mean, that I just read a quote actually last week by Martin Luther King. Everyone can be great because everyone can serve. Sometimes you think you need to be born superhuman to be a politician, to serve in public life. But basically, I think what we learned is that it's a decision. You decide that this is what you want to do. You dedicate your life to it, you work hard, and you could make a difference. Whether you act or you don't act, your life and your existence is going to make a difference. So you might as well make that choice and make it conscious and make it powerful. And it really was very exciting growing up in that feeling of people all around us who worked to change the world and really had an impact. There are so many stories running through my mind. I know another one that my dad speaks of a lot. There was a union organizer who came to our house for a Shabbos dinner who was African American, who started crying when the Kiddush Cup went around. And I was like, why? And he said, well, you know, in our lifetime, people of different colors did not drink from the same cup. And it just showed you how much things that, again, I took for granted as a reality were things that changed. And a very famous story in our family is about my mom, who told her parents, I will never marry anyone who is not against the Vietnam War. And it just showed that these issues that she saw were moral, were about the big world out there, were also about your personal life decisions. Now, on the one hand, her parents said, that is a crazy criteria to put for a spouse. But on the other hand, they went out and found my dad and then set them up. So, you know, these were the stories we were raised on. These were the people we were introduced to. So I don't take it for granted looking back and really appreciating all those memories. And I told my dad, it's not simple to then enjoy reading a book about memories that you yourself have and have heard the stories many times, but the book is a great read. So it's just really, really nice to be here. Becky, I'll turn it over to you for a little bit.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I was a bit younger during the political years. And although they flashed on the screen that nice picture of us marching in the parade, I'm told there were many political fundraisers that I threw a toddler temper tantrum during, and some parades where I covered my head with a blanket in the stroller because I didn't want to wave to the nice onlookers. So apologies for my toddler times there. But in all seriousness, even though I was young for a lot of the political years, I was still able to benefit so much and appreciate my dad's work in politics. And I've learned so many lessons. I guess just my dad really approached his political life with the noblest, simplest of intentions. He really just wanted to do the right thing on behalf of ordinary people. And it was just really genuine and simple. And that's just who he is. And I remember at my college graduation, my dad crying tears of joy, not just that I was having this milestone moment and not just that he would get to stop paying tuition, but also he was just looking around at the diverse crowd and crying these tears of pride in his country. He loves America, and he was just so proud that people of all backgrounds could get a quality education and advance themselves professionally and socially in America. And I remember also at that graduation, my dad trying to circumvent the Secret Service because the then U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder was giving the commencement address. And there was a certain injustice in a certain case that my dad really wanted to get a word with him on. So he tried catching him as he was coming down from the podium. And it's just such a classic moment because it's just who my dad was, just constantly, tirelessly working to ameliorate any injustice that he saw in any way and at all times. And those are the lessons that we learned, the importance of being honest and hard work and public service. And I think my dad learned that, as he writes in the book, from his parents behind the counter in the candy shop, opening up early, closing up late, just stopping at nothing to work for your family, for your community, for your children, for others. And those are my memories growing up, is my dad just sitting at the dining room table working on his legal matters until literally falling asleep in his chair. And today it's such a joy to see him in the role of grandfather, so devoted to his grandchildren, with weekly FaceTime sessions where he teaches them vocabulary words, and the funnest outings to the ice cream store to share an ice cream cone, and to the zoo, and to a Broadway show on a special occasion. So we're just so happy to be here today.
What an incredible, not just endorsement, but really your smiles and your enthusiasm mean so much. And you've been partners with your dad in now on the other side of the ocean, and hosting his friends, his colleagues in such gracious ways. And we're grateful to have you here today. And we hope if the grandchildren are all being taken care of, that you'll be able to stay on and with Diane later share some additional reflections. Bob, I know this is, we could probably stop the webinar right here and just say the luckiest guy, and everyone would understand. But let's talk about the book and what it meant at this stage in life. I'm going to actually start at the place of your release of the book. We're seeing the cover jacket on the screen. After a long wait and a lot of question marks, you actually got to have a book party or a book release in Jerusalem, and to have friends and colleagues there for this. Tell us about what that felt like for you, to be able to share this in Israel, in Jerusalem, and after a period of time where none of us got to see friends, family, colleagues for quite some time.
Yeah, well, thanks, Wayne, and thanks to the AIAFL, the American Israel Friendship League, for doing this very special thing in my life. I'll remember it forever. Well, we were in the midst of this pandemic, and we were like so many others, whether they were parents of children who moved to Israel, or parents who had children across the country, or others around the world who were separated from loved ones. We couldn't see them. We had videos, we had Zoom sessions, but there's nothing like putting your arms around somebody, embracing them, and giving them a hug and a kiss. And so, as soon as Israel opened up and allowed people to apply to come, and that was no small effort to try to get the permission of the government to come in and visit family members, we went and did it. And then my son-in-law, Rachel, and her husband, Rabbi Ian Pear, they've created this fabulous institution in Jerusalem called Shir Chadash. They run a nursery school, the most popular nursery school in all of Jerusalem. They run a girls' seminary, Amudim. They have a synagogue. They have speakers. They have become the heart of the Anglo community in Jerusalem. So they had a book launching for me, and they have this beautiful building. And what a thrill it was to see dozens of people come out, and it gave me the chance to come and speak about the book. And then a couple of weeks later, the Jerusalem Post did a wonderful review of the book. So, I'm tied, not only, as my daughter said, to life in this country that I'm so proud of, that I love so much, but I'm also tied to America's great ally in the world, ally in the Middle East. Well, there are very few true democracies on this globe, and Israel is one of them, and America is another one, the leading one. And so to see those two countries linked together is so important to me. And that's why I work with the American Israel Friendship League to bring delegations of people to come to Israel, to see Israel, women, minority people, university presidents, students, law review editors, and attorneys general. Every year for the last 25 years, I've been bringing delegations of attorneys general, because the press doesn't always give the accurate picture of what Israel is all about. And when you come to Israel and see it on your own, and ask your own questions, and visit people and institutions, and see the miracle that has been generated in such a short period of time, this incredible country, infrastructure, universities, hospitals, highways, railroad stations, verdant fields, green fields where there was arid desert land, where there was rocky soil, nothing growing. You see beautiful flowers and orchards and blooming, orange groves. So to see all this and to understand that is very important. And that's why each year I bring delegations of attorneys general and others, and I've developed a series of relationships with people who live in Israel. And to see all that come together at the book launching was wonderful. An event in the institution that my daughter and son-in-law built, that's become so important to the city of Jerusalem, to the life of a community, and in a place that is so meaningful to me, Israel, tied to the United States, and talking, about a book. And in the book, I have a chapter on Israel and Soviet Jewry. I mean, I've had the privilege of meeting with 6 prime ministers of Israel. What a lucky guy, why am I the luckiest guy in the world? In part, everybody's seeing it today. I'm married for over 46 years to a woman who has been loving and devoted and wonderful, Diane, and all of you are going to meet her soon. 2 fantastic daughters, 2 children. Did I ever dream that these 2 daughters would give me 8 grandchildren? I never would have dreamt that. And they're each of them so different and so loving and so wonderful. And so I'm a lucky guy because I've been given by the people of New York an opportunity to serve in the state assembly, as Borough President of the Bronx, as Attorney General of the state of New York. I was lucky because I survived an accident, a potential accident on a road on the New York State Thruway coming down from Albany when I was running for Borough President. I fell asleep at the wheel. I was working so hard, and I got out of that car and I escaped injury. And over 10 years ago, I had a very serious cancer, abdominal operation, a malignant tumor that was 30 centimeters long and 25 pounds in weight. And here I am today, still filled with energy and vigor, enjoying my family and having fun and trying to do some meaningful things for the community. So I consider myself truly the luckiest guy in the world.
So, Bob, we're looking at you in a Yankees hat here, which Rachel has chosen to honor you with wearing a cap as well today on Father's Day. Take us back to the Bronx. Take us back to your early upbringing. There's a wonderful photo of your parents that opened the series, and then a whole history of icons in New York for various movements. Tell us about what you grew up with and how you began to emulate the values of your family in your public career.
Right. Keep that photo. Keep my parents' photo on the screen. Bring it back for a minute. You'll see, because it's not only that's my mom and dad in the luncheonette, and look to the left. There's my dad holding a cigar. He smoked 10, 12 cigars a day. And my mother is mixing a drink. It's called an egg cream. It's one of the most famous drinks in all of New York. And people say, well, why is it called an egg cream? Because it has no egg and it has no cream. That's the crazy answer that a lot of people give. And look behind you. You want to know about the yesteryear. A pastrami sandwich costs 40 cents. I mean, you go to a deli in New York, it might cost $20 these days. So, and of course, it's my mom and dad, who work so hard. I get very emotional when I talk about them. And so they gave me fundamental values about hard work and decency and accepting people. The door of the store was open to everybody. It didn't matter whether you were rich or poor. It didn't matter whether you drove a Cadillac or a Chevrolet. It didn't matter whether you worked in the factory across the street. It didn't matter whether you were Hispanic or Black. It didn't matter whether you're young or old. I mean, they taught me fundamental values: hard work, candor, decency, love, honor, integrity, honesty, accepting all people. So I owe a lot. And of course, they got it from their parents, and their parents were immigrants. And I think I mentioned this in the book. There was a great reporter for WINS, one of the all-news radio stations in New York. And the first day I was Attorney General, Stan Brooks came and interviewed me in the office. And he held that microphone in front of me. And it was a Two World Trade Center. Unfortunately, that building doesn't exist today. And we know why, and we'll never forget why. And that's why Americans feel, they're going to fight to the end for their fundamental freedoms and values. And that's true of the state of Israel, too. So we're looking out the window of the World Trade Center. And Stan Brooks said, so how does it feel, Bob, to be the Attorney General of the state of New York? And I said, Stan, we're looking out this window. Look at that. What are we looking at? We're looking at the Statue of Liberty. And there was the Statue of Liberty. And he said, you know, what a country, what a beacon of hope and of freedom and opportunity. And I said, my grandparents came from Russia, from Tsarist Russia, escaping pogroms and persecution. And they came to this golden land. They called it the Golden of Medina, this golden land, this land of opportunity, this land of equality. And I said that I'm not sure my grandparents actually saw that statue because they were probably down in steerage. They maybe were not able to get to the deck to see the Statue of Liberty. But what a country that gave me the opportunity to be the Attorney General of the state of New York. But those values that they had, the love of country, the love of freedom, hard work, to work hard, to provide for family, and to grow, and to try to dream and to achieve. And so, you know, I'm the product of my family and my roots and my traditions. You know, I've been a strong person for organized labor. I've been for the little guy. I think it came from my grandparents. They saw people working in sweatshops. They saw people, you know, who were being taken advantage of. And they wanted to make sure that people had a fair shake in this country. They and others had a fair shake. And they passed that on to my parents, who passed it on to me. And I had the opportunity to try to do things with the power that the people gave me in the offices that they held, whether it was by vote in the state legislature, whether it was being the Borough President of the Bronx, 1.5 million people of great diversity, or having a tremendous honor and privilege of being the Attorney General of the state of New York, working with 50 attorneys general around the country to try to maximize the law in America and to maximize opportunity and bring about positive results for ordinary people.
Well, I think, you know, Becky put her finger on it when she said just doing the right thing for simple people is something, if you look at your career, it has transcended this, whether you were in elected office and running, serving on a board or serving as the head of all the attorney generals for the National Association of Attorney Generals. Tell us a little bit about what it means to have the power of law behind you when you're trying to do the right thing. And since you have been in politics and you have been around politicians, how do you ensure that the rule of law remains above all else? I'm curious for your reflections at this particular time where we've seen our institutions challenged in ways that many of us, when we were in law school, never would have even imagined. How do you relate that today as someone who's been at the helm of running legal protections for the state of New York?
Well, first of all, we all know that in a democracy, laws are passed. We elect officials who go to legislatures, whether it's the state legislature or the city council or the national government, the House of Representatives, or the United States Senate, and laws are passed. But my view, when I was Attorney General, what good is a law which theoretically ingrains opportunities and rights and privileges to a person if it's not enforced? The law has to be enforced, and there has to be a rule of law. No one is more privileged than the next one. If somebody's got more money, should not entitle that person to higher or greater rights than somebody else. If somebody has a different skin pigmentation, if somebody is an immigrant but became a citizen, that person should not have lesser rights than somebody else. If somebody is, you know, there shouldn't be discrimination. The law says there shouldn't be discrimination based upon gender, based upon religion, based upon sexual orientation. But if that law is not, or handicap, if that law is not enforced, then it's theoretical, it's meaningless. And that's why I was so excited, because I became an attorney general who can enforce the law, and I wanted to do it actively and vigorously and maximize the office of attorney general for the full benefit of people. And I try to encourage my colleagues. You know, we're living at a terrible time in politics in this country. You know, things have ground to a halt in Washington. The two parties can't get along with one another. Everything gets stalemated. Everything is political, based upon some, a party affiliation. When I was Attorney General, we all got together very well. We got along with each other, Democrats and Republicans, men, women, representatives of large states as well as small states, from the West, from the South, from the East. It didn't matter whether you were liberal or conservative. It didn't matter. We were attorneys general. We were men and women and colleagues together who wanted to do the right thing, and we worked together and we shared resources. It was a great time in my life, and those friendships are enduring. And in fact, I've seen on the screen some notes from attorneys general from around the country. I saw Frankie Sue Del Papa, who was the great attorney general from Nevada, saying hello. These friendships are enduring, and I must say, without getting overly partisan, I've been very distressed in recent years to see, the threat to some of our fundamental principles, the threat to the independence of government. The Justice Department belongs not to the president. It's not the private preserve of the president. The Justice Department belongs to the people. The judiciary should not be intimidated. The press is a wonderful institution. We may not like what's in the newspaper, but they have every right to express themselves and to put in there what they view is the news. And there have been threats and to each of those fundamental institutions, subpoenas that are rendered by the Congress to the executive branch of government shouldn't be ignored. They should be honored. Inspectors general of the various agencies shouldn't be intimidated. They should be able to issue their report. When a special report comes out, you shouldn't have the Attorney General of the United States withhold it and alter it and not release it and give a distorted summary. The twisting of our fundamental democratic principles. It's going on right now. I always believe that you have to open up the electoral process, give people more of a chance to vote. When I got elected to the state assembly, people could only vote in the primary in New York from 3 o'clock to 10 in the morning. I said, what? That's crazy. In election day, you can vote from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Why in a primary only from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m.? Because a lot of people can't vote during those hours. So I went in and put in bills. You got to make the primary hours the same as the general election hours. And let's have absentee ballot voting. Let's be inclusive. Let's have same day registration. And we see now across the country the diminution of voting rights. What a scandal. What a horror. Democracy should be broadened and expanded. So in any event, Wayne, there are still lots of issues to be fought out. And, I was just so lucky to be able to be around at a time when we can, have a stamp on this society and bring people together in a coordinated way for the benefit of the broad-based electorate.
Well, I would say without a doubt that the first 30 chapters of this memoir would give someone a real deep understanding of those principles that you're talking about and how you've championed them over a great deal of time. And just due to the short time we have together, I am now skipping way into chapter 31 because indeed, in a wonderful review you got in the Jerusalem Post and in the tablet that about the release of the book, it's hard to not acknowledge that the kind of bipartisanship that you created in your own work as a public servant transcended other passions in your life. And in particular, this chapter 31 deals with Soviet Jewry and Israel. And as I was looking through a number of these photos with you in advance, it really occurred to me that there have been times where your very public network of advocates that you've worked with on numerous issues throughout your career. What a blessing! What a wonderful opportunity for you to play this role of ambassador, listening to other people in other movements who have had struggles and being a champion for them, and then inviting them in to understand some of these sensitive issues that the Jewish community and the Jewish community allies have been deeply concerned about over years. Tell us a little, let's maybe start with the Soviet Jewry. We have this wonderful photo up here with, incredible American icon and Daniel Patrick Moynihan and with Golda. Tell us a little bit about what it means to be sitting at that table at that moment as someone who has advanced human rights.
Yeah, that was a press conference in support of Anatoly Sharansky. He was a Soviet Jewish refusenik. He applied to go to Israel with his wife, and the Russians denied him the opportunity, even though he was entitled to that opportunity under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and Soviet laws as well. And we were putting pressure on the Soviet government to try to deal with these thousands of applications of Jews living in the Soviet Union who wanted to go to Israel. 1/4 of the world's Jewish population lived in the Soviet Union. So the issue of Soviet Jews was very important. And here is a demonstration we had opposite the United Nations in front of the Isaiah Wall. And this was for Silva Zalmanson. The last one was for Anatoly Sharansky. That was his name then. It's now Natan Sharansky living in Israel, and what a wonderful life he's led once he got into Israel, performing tremendous service. Silva Zalmanson and her husband Edward Kuznetsov were part of a group that was also arrested, and there were so many refuseniks that we tried to help and deal with. And well, here we are in the Soviet Union with a meeting of a delegation of attorneys general. The attorneys general were going to the Soviet Union. The United States Information Agency asked us to go to express our values as we met with our counterparts. There'll be a photo hopefully coming up where the attorneys general were in the Kremlin meeting with the Procurator General of the USSR. And these attorneys general were fantastic. None of them were Jewish. They understood the issues of fundamental human rights and the problems of Soviet Jewry. I kept quiet at these meetings, but all of these attorneys general would be asking the penetrating questions. I have here a list of 350 refuseniks. Here we are in the Kremlin, and here's the Procurator General over in the center on the right, and the attorneys general are on the left. And this was as high a level as you can have in the Soviet Union in terms of a meeting at that point in time. And attorneys general hung in there together to keep the pressure on the Soviet government and to keep the issue alive. And so they were not only great allies and colleagues and friends here in the United States, but also when it came to other issues. Here we are, Percy Sutton, the great former borough president of Manhattan, Stanley Lowell, the president of the National Conference on Soviet Jewry, Rabbi Gilbert Clapperman, who, by the way, introduced me to my wife, Sister Rose Thiering, a Catholic nun who was so great in trying to bring the prestige of the Catholic Church and all that she represented to the cause of Soviet Jewry. We're on an island, a little island of rock called Belmont Island that was a rock outcropping as a result of the building of subway opposite the United Nations building. And we unfurled a flag, Save Soviet Jews. We wanted all the delegates in the United Nations to see that flag. So we had broad support. You know, we went international on it. We had conferences in Brussels, we had conferences in Jerusalem. Here we are with the Leviches. The photo down below is Tanya and Benjamin Levitch and their two sons. I was active in their case. This is Sleepak, Vladimir Sleepak and Maria Sleepak. I took the attorneys general to their apartment. This photo was taken in their apartment in Moscow. Vladimir spent years in prison. He was sent to the Gulag for holding out a sign, "Let my people go." That photograph you just saw was of Panov, Valery Panov, the great Kirov ballet dancer, and Galina Panov. I interceded in their case. I raised their issue when I was in the Soviet Union. And here they are arriving at John F. Kennedy Airport, and I'm giving them a bouquet of roses. The Soviet Jewry movement was so important. Over 1,250,000. There's Natan Sharansky, and to his left is the Attorney General of Idaho, Larry Echo Hawk, the first Native American ever elected to statewide office in the United States, the Attorney General of Utah. So Natan Sharansky was having breakfast with us in Jerusalem on one of our AG delegations. The photo up here is of Yosef Begun, one of the courageous refuseniks. This photo was taken in the Soviet Union. So, I mean, it was so exciting to be on the front line of these issues and to involve others, whether it be David Dinkins or Percy Sutton, members of the African American community, people from the Hispanic community, Democrats, Republicans, senators, attorneys general, all who believe that people are entitled to fundamental rights. And Soviet Jewry was an important issue, therefore, for fundamental freedom. And they were, just as we were walking the picket lines for those who were the victims of apartheid in South Africa, they were willing to hold, a hearing. David Dinkins came with me, with Bob Abrams, to hold a hearing in Helsinki, Finland, just before Ronald Reagan was going into the Soviet Union for the first time on the issue of Soviet Jewry, so that would be on the agenda of President Reagan and Secretary Shultz, George Shultz, a great man who just recently passed away. He visited with us when we were in Helsinki. He made sure that the Soviets knew that we were committed to the issue of the redemption of Soviet Jewry.
Bob, your advocacy on behalf of Soviet Jewry, the end of the Cold War, the miracle of having a Natan Sharansky and Yosef Begun, these figures, getting to see them in Israel afterwards, it feels like a certain level of justice was done. And that must feel incredibly like an incredible accomplishment, maybe an accomplishment you didn't even expect you might get to see in your own lifetime.
Yeah, it's heartwarming. I have a photo in my office of Vladimir Slepak before and after. The one that was on your screen, taken in Moscow, and the one taken in Jerusalem when he got out. And I happened to be there when he got the news after, I think he waited 17 years for permission. And the Soviets were brutal to him. They let some of his children go, but they refused to allow he and his wife to leave. And he finally left, and we met him in Israel, and it was a heartwarming experience. Let me just say this finally. When lots of us get involved in causes, we have demonstrations, we have protests, and very often they don't succeed. But this was a movement that had enormous success. The Soviet Union broke up. Jews were allowed to leave. Israel benefited by having over 1 million people from the Soviet Union come to live in Israel. And these people helped to build the state of Israel. Over 250,000 left to go to live in other parts of the world, particularly in the United States. So, and this was a movement that was not only on behalf of Jews, but it had ramifications for others living in the Soviet Union, because we were pointing to problems that were fundamental to the tyrannical rule of the Soviet system. So it was really exciting to not only do this important work, but to see that it ultimately bore fruit.
Well, it certainly did on multiple levels for individuals as well as for the collective movement, and this connection point with Israel. Let's use that as our departure to spend a little time talking about the other passion in your life beside Diane and your family, Israel. You've been schlepping your kids to Israel Day parades. You've been only to be able to watch them then go and make Aliyah and build their own lives and careers and families in Israel. Tell us a little bit about the origins of that. And I'd love to bring Diane into this part of the story, because we've got a great photo in here at an Israel Day parade. Diane, maybe you could just share with us a little bit about your being that partner. Here's this photo. Tell us a little bit about what this photo means to you and where it is in the journey you and Bob have been on together with your families.
Well, it just so happens that photo was taken the day that our engagement was announced in the New York Times. And that's Teddy Kollek, very well-known, very successful mayor of Jerusalem. And right next to him is Herb Tenza, who was a friend of my family's. He became a congressman, but on that day, he was so happy to see me and Bob getting engaged that he took the mic and announced our engagement to everybody at the parade. And Bob and I decided after that we would march together in the Israeli Day Parade every year. And we did first together, and then as our children grew, they marched with us, and Bob's parents often marched with us. And, you know, I only can second what Bob said about his dad, Ben Abrams, amazing father, and his mother, Dottie. If we'd call to ask them for something, they'd say yes before they even knew what it was. My father, too, Jack Schulder, adored Bob. It's always very nice when the in-laws like the other party that you marry. And he did everything he could to support Bob in his races. And Herb Tenzer, you know, AIFL is celebrating their 50th anniversary this year. And Bob and I plan to celebrate our 47th anniversary in September. Looking forward, hopefully, to the 50th, if we're lucky enough to keep our good health. And so, you know, our children also had an excellent education at the Ramaz School, and not only in secular studies, but in their Hebrew traditions. And when we were first married, Bob made a promise to me that Friday night would be sacrosanct. No matter who asked him to appear at an event, how important it was, how rough the campaign was, and the campaigns could get very rough, he was there for the family, and he never went back on that. He was there every Friday night. As the children grew up, they were with us, sitting around the table. And this was a great opportunity for us, not just as a spiritual experience, which of course it was on the Sabbath, but it was a way to open up our children to the world around us. And that was when they first became aware of journalists and people in public life, and, you know, and friends, and what were the issues of the day and what was going on in the world. And before you know it, they were participating in the conversations with the grown-ups. And it was a very fortunate thing for our family that we were able to keep this going all the years when our children were growing up.
So, Bob, you probably have a lot of frequent flyer miles on El Al from over the years. Tell us a little bit about some of your memories of meeting with those prime ministers. You got a great story in the book from Golda Meir, talking about her visit to your visit and her visit before to Liberia, and learning about Israel's program of development in Mashav and providing agricultural resources. What are you most proud of as you think back on some of these encounters you've had, learning the Israel story sort of from the inside, and maybe contrary, as you said before, to what tends to be focused on in the New York Times and elsewhere?
Well, you know, so much happened during that period of time, and to be able to have attorneys general join me on some of these visits. Some were private visits, some we had the opportunity to meet with Shimon Peres when he was prime minister, when he was president, Yitzhak Shamir. You know, there were Sharon. We met with Prime Minister Sharon with 5 different attorneys general, and there was Mark Shurtleff quoting, you know, from books that Elie Wiesel wrote about the Holocaust and the commitment to Israel. And Sharon, I mean, his jaw dropped. How does this big, burly attorney general from Utah know so much, and why is he so committed and interested? So it was a broadening experience all the way around. I think Israeli officials got to see American government officials, and we in turn got to meet some of the great leaders in Israel. You know, the experience you said with Golda Meir, you know, I was the borough president of the Bronx. I was given the chance to have a private meeting with her. I was impressed. I walked in. Usually you meet the prime minister of a country. There's a very imposing desk. There was this simple metal desk, and she greeted me in a Midwestern Milwaukee accent. Very nice to see you, Mr. Abrams. And then, she showed me books behind her. She said, every time we're a small country, and people, serve in the army. And when we lose one of our own, it's very meaningful to us. We record it for all time. And she pulled out a volume and showed me how this young man who died in defense of Israel had written poetry, and showed me another. She went a few pages later, and there was somebody else who was musically inclined and played a terrific musical instrument. So she impressed upon me, what it meant to love Israel and to serve in Israel. And then I told her about a recent experience I had in Western Europe. I went to Liberia. I was visiting a rubber plantation, and we were stopping at this little house for a cool drink. And as I'm sitting at the table, I saw on the wall some photographs, and I saw little portraits, and I saw some writing, and I thought it was Hebrew writing. So I got up out of my seat. I went over, and sure enough, it was Hebrew writing. And I asked the person in that house, I said, "What's this about?" And the person said, "Oh, that's from some wonderful Israelis who came to visit us. And they're very good in agriculture, and they taught us their techniques, and we had problems in production, and we made such wonderful friends, and we're so indebted to them, so important." So I was telling this story to gold in my ear. I said, Israel has made such powerful friends. And she said, "Well, Mr. Abrams, maybe they express friendship to you, but they don't always vote for Israel at the United Nations." And that was true then, and it's true today. Unfortunately, the United Nations is stacked against the state of Israel. But wonderful memories that were meaningful to me and to others who ever joined me on those occasions.
Bob, when you travel to Israel, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that, particularly when you travel with the attorney generals, as you have for many years now with AIFL, you get to meet with the machers, right? You get to go to the Supreme Court. You meet with the head of the Bar Association. You meet with the Attorney General's office, obviously, Justice Ministry in Israel. But what I find, and I get to read all the reports and get all the reactions from all these various delegations, invariably, one of the most consistent highlights that is pointed out by delegations that I've been with, delegations you've led, etc., is the simple Shabbos dinner with your daughter and son-in-law and grandchildren. Why do you think that is?
Well, first of all, Wayne, you're absolutely right. At the end of the trip with Attorneys General, before we get on the El Al flight, we have a farewell dinner. And everybody stands up at his or her place, and they just say what they want, what stands out in their mind. And Diane have been bowled over year after year without prompting. And as you say, they met with important people. They've had powerful briefings. And invariably, they turn to us and they say, "Well, we will never be able to repay Bob and Diane for the opportunity they gave us to come into their children's home to share a Friday night." It was so meaningful to them. One attorney general from Oklahoma told me he called his wife afterwards and he said, "I just had this experience. We have to meet as a family every, at least once a week. Let's do it Sunday afternoon, whatever." It was a powerful experience because, and I learned a lesson from that. We can take them all over. They can see the sites, the religious sites, the important installations and facilities that we built. They can be briefed by important people, but they got to see what Israel is all about, really about, and that's the people. And to bring them into a home like Rachel and Ian, and sometimes we open up the homes of others so that they can share that kind of experience. So that's what's really fundamental, to see, what family life is all about, what the values of Israel are all about, to watch the kids, because you go around the table at one of those dinners, and the kids get up. We don't ignore them. Every attorney general rises, not at the farewell dinner, but at the Shabbos meal. We go around the table because my son-in-law says, he has a tradition. Tell us what was the best thing that happened to you during the course of this week, and give us a piece of wisdom, and tell us who you are. And the kids participate as well, and it has an impact on them. So, again, we're ending where we started. I'm very proud. I'm very lucky. It's a great family, great country, America, Israel, and somehow it all blends together.
Well, all those things really are very much a part of your legacy, and that we're celebrating today, and that the memoir brings together in a very coherent fashion, as well as with some of these pictures. Your name is associated with law and justice, with everything you've touched, and indeed, that in itself is an incredible legacy. But you don't seem to be retiring. Your energy, your vigor, and your championing of rights for your community. You refer to your proud Jewish heritage, and you refer to. I think what I was so impressed with in the book, frankly, when I went back and looked at my notes, was actually going back to the introduction from the current Attorney General, Letitia James, and her describing you as someone very similar to her. And from the moment she met you, feeling the commonalities that the two of you shared. And that sort of struck me, given her age and her background being very different than yours. Yet she was able to identify that and to acknowledge that having your guidance as a mentor, as someone who helped her begin a career, was incredibly valuable. And I wonder again why that universal quality has allowed you to reach people from many, many different backgrounds and heritages about the issues that you care the most about.
Well, first of all, I'm very proud that Attorney General Letitia James, who has done such an extraordinary job, was willing to write the foreword for the book, and I treasure the words that she utilized. There's so much work to be done. Unfortunately, while this is a great country, there's a lot of division within the country. And somehow we have to be able to bring things together a lot better. And we have to unify. And we have to understand that there's a common humanity among us. And maybe what you just said is important. Here's an African-American woman saying that she feels kinship with a guy like me. And it's people of goodwill. I mean, in the book, over 100,000 words had to be cut out of this final edition of the book. I had a whole chapter about the LDS Church, about the Mormon community. I spent a lot of time in recent years reaching out for the Jewish community to get to know better and understand better the LDS community, and similarly, the LDS community reaching out to the Jewish community. So, whether it's African Americans, Spanish-speaking people, Asians, this country is polyglot, is a melting pot, and it's so similar to Israel that way too. A lot of the people who come never realized how diverse Israel is. That's another similarity. It's the core fundamental democratic values, and it's the diversity found in our two countries. So, we need more of that. We've got to harmonize better. We have to bring our populace together a lot better. We see it in Israel. They just had 4 elections, and they just brought about a unity government for the first time with Arab members of the Knesset, with liberals from Meretz and Likud and others. And so America and Israel is struggling to try to have that better unity.
Well, you certainly are doing that to advance this mission. That it was so wonderful to see Diane's picture with Herb Tenzer, who she mentioned. We're celebrating 50 years of building bridges like this. It's an amazing legacy about what we're inheriting and what the next 50 years could look like. So we have a little time to script that out and involve people in that celebration. For now, the one program note as we continue this work on our weekly series twice a week, bringing together Americans and Israelis, different perspectives, different backgrounds, just as Bob was referring to. We have a webinar this Wednesday with the National Conference of State Legislators, Democrats, Republicans, different members of the Israeli parliamentary system and government who have been dealing with vaccination. What we've learned from one another after this very, very, very difficult year. So we encourage everyone in the spirit of this webinar to come week in, week out and continue to see the miracles and the really optimistic innovations that Israelis and Americans are bringing together to create some new realities. For today, the book is here, Luckiest Guy in the World. It's a wonderful, inspiring, uplifting read. We'll continue to push it out. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it through all the links we'll provide afterwards. Today is Father's Day, so this is our Father's Day message to Bob and his beautiful family and all of the well-wishers out there. We have wonderful comments from friends and family who've joined us today. I'm going to send a special greeting to my Brooklyn boy dad, Bruce, for a happy Father's Day. He's watching as well and very proud of your work as a public servant to sort of make this a collective celebration. Becky, Rachel, Diane, Senator Joe, everybody who's been a part of this magical Father's Day celebration. It's virtual. We look forward to being together. And stay tuned for some really exciting announcements we have about how we like to celebrate at the AIFL for our coming milestone of a 50-year anniversary. Thanks, everyone. Shavua Tov. Have a great, safe week.
Thanks, Wayne.
Very good.